The man in the aisle screamed before anyone saw the blood. Not loud, not dramatic, just one sharp sound, torn straight out of the chest, followed by the hollow thud of a body hitting the floor. The cabin froze. Overhead bins rattled. Somewhere behind row 30, a woman gasped and covered her mouth. The plane was still climbing, engines roaring like they were trying to outrun what had just happened inside. Claire Monroe did not move. She sat in her economy seat, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the man crumpled near the galley. His face had gone grey in seconds. Sweat slicked his hair. His fingers clawed weakly at the carpet, as if the floor itself had betrayed him. "Sit down," a flight attendant snapped. "Everyone stay seated." The voice belonged to Dana Hargreave, lead attendant. Early 40s, upright posture, tight smile that didn't reach the eyes. She stood rigid, blocking the aisle, as if authority alone could hold the situation together. "We need help," someone said. He collapsed. Dana didn't look at the man. She looked at the passengers. "Medical emergencies are handled by protocol," she said, crisp and flat. "Please remain calm." Claire watched the man's chest stutter, watched his mouth open and close, searching for air that wouldn't come. She leaned forward slightly, just enough to see the panic spreading in the rows ahead. People whispered. Someone fumbled for a call button and stopped, unsure. "This is wrong," the man across the aisle muttered. He was in his late 60s, silver hair, wedding ring worn thin. They're wasting time. Claire felt the familiar tightening behind her ribs. Not fear, recognition. She had seen this before, in hospitals, in courtrooms, in boardrooms where silence masqueraded as order. "Ma'am," Dana said sharply, turning toward Claire, "please sit back." Claire hadn't spoken. She hadn't moved. But something about her posture, the way her eyes stayed steady, had drawn attention like a magnet. "He needs oxygen," Claire said quietly. Dana blinked. Once. "Are you a doctor?" "No." "Then I suggest you let the crew do their job." The man on the floor let out a wet, choking sound. A younger attendant hovered behind Dana, hands shaking, eyes darting between the man and her superior. She looked like she wanted to kneel to help, but didn't dare. Claire stood. The plane seemed to inhale. Dana's face hardened instantly. "Ma'am, sit down now. You are interfering with crew duties. I am preventing you from making this worse." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Someone said her name wasn't Claire. It was Karen. No, it was just some lady who should mind her business. Someone else said the man was turning blue. Dana stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You do not get to decide what happens on my aircraft." Claire met her gaze, calm, unblinking. "This isn't yours." That did it. Dana straightened, voice rising, the practiced tone of someone used to being obeyed. "I need everyone to understand that standing passengers are a safety risk. If you do not comply, I will escalate this." "Escalate to who?" the older man across the aisle demanded. "The floor?" Dana ignored him. She looked at the younger attendant. "Get the incident report started." The younger woman hesitated. Her eyes flicked to the man gasping on the carpet. "Shouldn't we call for medical volunteers?" Dana's jaw tightened. "We will when I say so." Claire knelt beside the fallen man, the smell of recycled air mixed with sweat and fear. She placed 2 fingers against his neck. Weak pulse, erratic. "You're having trouble breathing," she said softly, more to anchor him than to inform. "Stay with me." Dana moved fast. Too fast. "Get away from him," she said. "Now!" Claire didn't look up. "If you delay another minute, he loses consciousness." Dana reached out and grabbed Claire's arm. Not hard, not violent, just enough to assert control. Every sound in the cabin dropped away. The grip was wrong. Clumsy. A mistake. Claire turned her head slowly, looked at the hand on her sleeve, then up at Dana. The younger attendant sucked in a breath. A man in the back whispered, "Oh no." Dana released her grip as if she'd touched something hot. "You were warned." Claire stood, not abruptly, not aggressively. She rose to her full height, smoothing the front of her coat. Grey, unremarkable. The kind of coat no one remembers. "You just crossed a line," Claire said. Dana laughed once. Sharp, unpleasant. "You have no idea where the lines are." Before Claire could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "I'm a retired paramedic," someone called out. "Let me through." A man in his 70s pushed into the aisle, hands raised. Dana hesitated. Just a fraction too long. "Fine," she said. "1 minute." The paramedic dropped to his knees, barking instructions. "Oxygen, space," a call to the cockpit. As the crisis shifted, the cabin exhaled. People slumped back into their seats. A few wiped their eyes. The man across from Claire nodded at her, slow and deliberate. Dana stepped back, chest rising and falling too fast. She looked around, aware now of the eyes on her, measuring, judging. Her gaze landed on Claire again. "You," she said quietly. "After this is handled, you and I are going to have a conversation." Claire said nothing. She looked past Dana, toward the front of the plane, toward the closed cockpit door, toward systems that only worked when people inside them chose to act. Somewhere above them, the seatbelt sign chimed on again, a reminder of rules, of order. Claire sat back down. Her hands were steady, her face unreadable. But inside, something had shifted. This flight was not going to be quiet. The oxygen masks snap into place with a dry click, the sound small but final, like a door locking behind them. The man on the floor coughed once, then again, deeper this time. Color crept back into his cheeks in uneven patches. The retired paramedic leaned close, speaking low, steady, the way men do when they've spent a lifetime talking people back from the edge. Around them, the cabin stayed unnaturally quiet. No one looked away. No one trusted the calm. Dana Hargreaves stood a few steps back, arms crossed now, posture rigid. Control had slipped through her fingers, and everyone had felt it. She knew it too. Her eyes kept moving, counting witnesses, measuring damage. "Captain's been notified," the younger attendant whispered to her. Her name tag read Lily Park, late 20s, freshly pressed uniform, hands still shaking. "He's asking for details." Dana didn't answer right away. She watched Claire instead. Claire sat upright in her seat, knees together, hands resting on her bag. She looked older now than before, not in years, but in weight, like something heavy had settled behind her eyes. She didn't check the man on the floor. She didn't seek approval from the passengers who had watched her stand when no one else did. She simply waited. The paramedic lifted his head. "He needs to stay on oxygen until we land," he said. Blood pressure dropped hard. Could have gone bad if we waited longer. A ripple moved through the rows. Someone whispered, "Thank God." Someone else muttered that it almost did. Dana's lips tightened. "Thank you, sir," she said, tone clipped. "We'll take it from here." The paramedic didn't move right away. He looked at her, eyes narrowed. "You almost didn't." Dana bristled. "Sir, please return to your seat." He held her gaze a second longer than polite. Then he stood and shuffled back down the aisle, steady but slow, the way age teaches you to move when you know rushing no longer helps. As soon as he was gone, Dana turned sharply toward Claire. "Seatbelt," she said. "Now." Claire reached down and clicked it into place without a word. Dana leaned in, just enough that only Claire could hear. Her voice dropped. "You embarrassed me." Claire looked up. You endangered him. You think you know how this works? Dana said. You think because you speak calmly, you get to override protocol? I think protocol is meant to serve people, Claire replied, not the other way around. Dana straightened. Her smile returned, thin and professional, the kind built to survive complaints. We'll discuss this after landing. Of course, Claire said. Dana moved away, heels sharp against the aisle floor. Lily followed her toward the galley, glancing back once, eyes apologetic, confused, grateful all at the same time. The plane leveled off. The engines settled into a lower, steadier roar. The crisis, at least on the surface, had passed. But something else had begun. Across the aisle, the older man leaned toward Claire. You did the right thing, he said quietly. Claire nodded once. So did you, for saying something. He snorted softly. Took me longer than it should have. That's how it usually goes, she said. He studied her face. You've been in rooms like this before. Claire met his gaze. Yes. What do you do? He asked. She hesitated. Not long, just enough. I work in systems. He smiled, the kind of smile that meant he understood more than she'd said. Systems fail when people stop listening. Yes, Claire said. They do. In the galley, Dana slammed the service cart into place, harder than necessary. Lily flinched. She had no right, Dana said under her breath. No right at all. Lily swallowed. The man could have... I know what could have happened, Dana snapped. Don't lecture me. I wasn't. Dana turned on her. Then don't look at me like that. Lily dropped her eyes. Captain wants a full report, she said. He asked specifically about the passenger who stood up. Dana's jaw tightened again. I'll handle it. She pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen, documenting, shaping, selecting words. Interference, non-compliance, raised voice. She paused, hovering over the last line. Physical contact. Her fingers hesitated. Then she typed, minimal. From her pocket, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Are you on the flight to Los Angeles? Dana frowned. She ignored it. Back in the cabin, Claire closed her eyes for the first time since the man had fallen. Not to rest, to listen. She felt the plane's vibration through the seat, the low hum through her spine, the collective unease still hanging in the air like static after a storm. She thought of the reports she had read late at night, of the patterns no one wanted to name, of the phrase that kept appearing again and again, written by different hands in different cities. Hostile tone, dismissive behavior, escalation without cause. She opened her eyes as footsteps stopped beside her row. A man stood there, mid-50s, well-dressed, carrying himself like someone used to authority, but uncomfortable wearing it in public. He glanced at the man still on oxygen, then back at Claire. I'm Martin Hale, he said quietly. I'm the airline's regional safety liaison. I was on this flight. Claire raised an eyebrow. You travel light for that title. He gave a tight smile. Today's unofficial. Is there such a thing? He leaned closer. Dana Hargreave has a reputation. Claire studied him. So do systems that protect people like her. Martin exhaled slowly. You're not wrong. They held each other's gaze, two people recognizing the same fracture from opposite sides. I'll need your statement after landing, he said. You'll get it, Claire replied. And your name? Claire didn't answer right away. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the flight moved west, chasing afternoon into evening. Outside, the sky stretched wide and indifferent. My name is Claire Monroe, she said finally. Martin nodded. Thank you, Ms. Monroe. As he walked away, Dana watched from the galley, eyes sharp, mind racing. She didn't know who Claire Monroe was, but she knew trouble when she saw it. And for the first time in a very long career, Dana felt something cold slide down her spine. Not fear. Exposure. The seatbelt sign chimed again, a soft electronic note that no one trusted anymore. The man on oxygen had stabilized. His breathing was slow now, shallow but steady. The retired paramedic checked the gauge one more time, then nodded to himself and finally sat down, exhaustion settling into his shoulders. The crisis had passed, but the cabin remained altered, like a room after an argument where everyone remembers what was said. Dana Hargreave felt it everywhere, in the way passengers watched her now, in the silence that followed her footsteps. Authority still clung to her uniform, but respect had thinned, stretched too tight. She hated that feeling. She straightened her jacket and stepped into the aisle, voice controlled, professional, slightly louder than necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your cooperation earlier. The situation is under control. We will be continuing normal service shortly. No applause, no reassurance. A woman in the back crossed herself. Someone near the window whispered, "About time." Dana's eyes flicked toward the sound, sharp and warning, but she said nothing. She moved forward, stopping beside Claire's row. "Ms. Monroe," she said, carefully neutral. "The captain will want to speak with you after landing." Claire looked up slowly. "I'll be available." Dana lingered, waiting for something else. An apology, defiance, fear. She got none of it. Across the aisle, the older man with the wedding ring spoke again. "You should thank her." Dana turned on him. "Sir, this is not your—" "She did what you wouldn't," he said, calm but unyielding. "That man would be dead if she hadn't stood up." A murmur of agreement followed. Low, dangerous. Dana felt the heat rise into her face. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She nodded once, stiff, and walked away. In the galley, Lily stood frozen, pretending to organize cups that didn't need organizing. Dana leaned against the counter, lowering her voice. "Do not write anything else in the report unless I tell you." Lily swallowed. "Captain asked for timelines. He wants to know why oxygen wasn't deployed sooner." Dana's eyes hardened. "Then he'll get the timeline I give him." "That's not enough," Dana snapped. She took a breath, forced her tone down. "You're new. Let me give you some advice. Airlines don't run on good intentions. They run on consistency. You break protocol once, you invite chaos." Lily nodded, but her eyes flicked toward the cabin, toward Claire. "Sometimes protocol is the chaos." Dana stared at her, long enough to make the message land. Lily looked away. Several rows back, Martin Hale sat quietly, phone in hand, not recording, just typing notes. He watched Dana's reflection in the galley divider, the way she held herself, like a dam with cracks spreading beneath the surface. He had seen this pattern before, the defensive tightening, the rewriting of events, the belief that longevity equaled immunity. He glanced at Claire again. She was still. Not withdrawn, not tense, simply present. The kind of presence that unsettled people who relied on noise and motion to assert control. Martin typed one final line, then locked his phone. Claire felt the eyes before she saw them. The younger attendant, Lily, stood at the edge of her row, tray in hand. "Can I get you anything?" Lily asked softly. Claire studied her face, the tight jaw, the conflicted eyes. Water would be fine. Lily nodded quickly and moved away. When she returned, she placed the cup down with both hands, as if anchoring herself. "I'm sorry," Lily said, barely audible. "For what?" Claire asked. "For freezing," Lily replied. "I should have spoken sooner." Claire took the cup, met her gaze. You spoke when it mattered. Lily's eyes filled. She blinked hard and turned away before anyone could see. The plane hit mild turbulence. A sudden jolt. A few gasps. The cabin lights flickered, then steadied. Claire's fingers tightened around the cup. She thought of another flight, years ago. Different airline, different uniform, same silence. A woman across the aisle, a child crying. No one intervening until it was almost too late. She had learned something that day. Systems did not change because people were bad. They changed because someone refused to look away. At the front of the plane, the cockpit door opened. Captain Reynolds stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, late 50s, eyes tired but sharp. He surveyed the cabin, then made his way down the aisle, stopping beside the man on oxygen, exchanging quiet words with the paramedic. Then he turned toward Claire. Dana noticed immediately. Her spine stiffened. "Ms. Monroe," the captain said. His voice was measured, respectful. "May I have a word?" Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Claire stood. She followed him forward, past the galley, into the narrow space near the cockpit. Dana hovered nearby, arms crossed, listening without pretending not to. "I've reviewed the preliminary report," Captain Reynolds said, "and spoken with our safety liaison." Martin inclined his head slightly from a few steps back. "There are discrepancies," the captain continued, "and concerns." Dana stepped forward. "Captain, with respect, this passenger disrupted." "Dana," he said calmly, "not now." Dana froze. The rebuke was quiet, public. Captain Reynolds turned back to Claire. "I'd like your account, after landing." "You'll have it," Claire said. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you for staying composed under pressure." Dana's nails bit into her palm. The captain returned to the cockpit. Martin followed, giving Claire a brief, unreadable look. Dana waited until the door closed. "You think you've won something," she said, low. "You haven't." Claire met her eyes. This was never about winning. Dana scoffed. "People like you always say that." "People like me?" Claire asked. Dana stopped herself. Too late. Silence stretched between them, thick and brittle. Finally, Dana straightened, mask firmly back in place. "Enjoy the rest of your flight." She walked away without looking back. As the plane continued west, sunlight slipping lower through the windows, the cabin settled into a fragile calm. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. Some passengers slept. Others stared out at the clouds, lost in thought. Claire sat back down. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened window. Older, sharper, ready. She hadn't revealed anything yet, but the plane was already changing course. The descent began without announcement, a subtle shift in pressure that made ears pop and conversations trail off. The cabin lights dimmed another degree, casting everything in a tired amber glow that made faces look older, lines deeper, truths harder to hide. Dana Hargreave felt it like a countdown. She stood in the galley, hands wrapped around the edge of the counter, staring at nothing. Her reflection in the polished metal looked wrong to her. Too tight, too alert. She had spent 2 decades mastering the art of control at altitude. Turbulence, drunk passengers, medical scares, mechanical delays. She knew how to keep order when things went sideways. What she did not know how to manage was a variable she could not name. Claire Monroe. Dana replayed the moment again and again. The way Claire had knelt without asking. The way she had spoken without raising her voice. The way the cabin had tilted, subtly, toward her. Authority without uniform. Power without noise. That kind of presence didn't come from confidence training or seniority. It came from rooms where decisions carried weight. Dana hated that she recognized it. Her phone vibrated again in her pocket, the same unknown number. Are you sure about what you wrote? This time, Dana didn't ignore it. Who is this? The reply came almost immediately. Someone who's been cleaning up after you for a long time. Dana's throat tightened. She locked the phone and slipped it back into her pocket, just as Lily stepped into the galley. "Captain wants you up front," Lily said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were guarded now. Something had shifted in her, too. "Now?" Dana asked. "He said before landing." Dana nodded once and followed, heels clicking, posture straight. She passed Claire's row without looking. She could feel the woman there, though, like gravity. In the cockpit, Captain Reynolds didn't offer a seat. He stood by the console, arms crossed, eyes on the instruments until Dana stopped a few feet away. "I've reviewed the full timeline," he said, "and spoken to Martin Hale." Dana opened her mouth. He raised a hand. "This isn't a debate." Her jaw tightened. "You delayed medical response," he continued. "You physically intervened with a passenger, and you attempted to shape the report before all facts were established." "I maintained order," Dana said. "That passenger interfered." Reynolds finally looked at her. His expression wasn't angry. It was disappointed. "That was worse." "Dana," he said, "I've flown with you for 8 years. I know your strengths. I also know when you're protecting the wrong thing." She swallowed. "You weren't there." "I was," he replied calmly. "Just not in the aisle." Silence stretched. "After we land," Reynolds continued, "you are relieved of duty pending review. You'll remain in the rear cabin until local operations meets the aircraft." Dana felt the floor tilt. "You can't do that without—" "I can," he said. "And I am." She searched his face for hesitation. Found none. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed again. This time, she looked. "You should have taken the refresher training when you were told to." Her fingers trembled. Back in the cabin, Claire felt the shift before she saw Dana return to the galley, face pale, movements stiff. The air had changed again. Tighter. Anticipatory. Martin Hale leaned into the aisle beside her seat. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Claire nodded. "Are you?" He exhaled. "Depends how this plays out." "It already is," Claire said. Martin studied her. "You know, when I took this job, I thought I'd be preventing accidents, mechanical failures, missed procedures." "And instead?" Claire asked. "And instead," he said, "it's people. It's always people." A chime sounded. The captain's voice filled the cabin, measured and calm, announcing their approach into Los Angeles, thanking passengers for their patience. Claire closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of the man on oxygen, now stable, escorted to the front rows by Lily and the paramedic. She thought of Lily's apology, of the older man's quiet support, of the way silence had almost killed someone. She opened her eyes as Dana emerged again, this time flanked by a man in a dark blazer she hadn't seen before. Late 40s, clean cut, airport operations, the look of someone who had already read the file. The man stopped beside Claire's row. "Ms. Monroe," he said, "I'm James Adler, Station Operations Manager. May we speak after landing?" "Yes," Claire said. Dana stared at her, not with anger now, with recognition. The wheels hit the runway hard, a solid thump that rattled teeth and nerves. The cabin exhaled in uneven relief. Some passengers clapped out of habit. Others stayed still, watching. As the plane taxied, 2 uniformed officers appeared at the forward door, speaking quietly with Captain Reynolds. They did not look towards the cabin. Not yet. Dana's phone buzzed one last time. This didn't have to end like this. She typed back, fingers stiff. It already did. The seatbelt sign went dark. No one moved. James Adler's voice carried. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated for a moment. We appreciate your cooperation." The officers stepped inside. They did not approach Claire. They walked past her, straight to the galley. Dana felt the blood drain from her face as one of them spoke her name. "Dana Hargreave," the officer said. "We need to ask you a few questions regarding an in-flight incident." The cabin watched. No shouting, no handcuffs, just procedure. Clean, public, irreversible. As Dana was escorted toward the rear, her eyes met Claire's. For a moment, something flickered there. Regret, defiance. A question that would never be answered. Claire held her gaze, not in triumph, in judgment. After Dana disappeared, James Adler turned back to Claire. His tone shifted. Respectful, careful. "There will be a formal review," he said. "Statements, legal involvement." "I expect nothing less," Claire replied. "And your role in this," he continued, "will become clearer." Claire gathered her bag and stood. "Yes," she said quietly. "It will." Behind them, passengers began to whisper again. Not fear now. Curiosity. Speculation. Stories forming in real time. Claire stepped into the aisle. The camera, if there had been one, would have followed her face. Calm, controlled, unrevealed. The real turbulence was just beginning. The jet bridge sealed with a hollow thud, a sound that marked the end of flight and the beginning of consequence. No one rushed for the overhead bins. The aisle stayed clear, like an unspoken agreement had been made. Claire waited. James Adler stood near the forward door, speaking in low tones with the officers. Their posture was relaxed but precise, the way law enforcement looks when the situation is already under control. Dana Hargreave was no longer visible. She had been taken off quietly through the service exit, shielded from cameras, from questions, from the kind of spectacle that followed people later. Martin Hale reappeared beside Claire's row. "They're clearing the cabin in stages," he said. "You'll be first." "Of course," Claire replied. Behind them, Lily Park stood frozen, hands clasped in front of her. Her face had gone pale, the adrenaline draining now that there was nothing left to do. When James nodded in her direction, she flinched, then straightened. "Lily," he said gently, "you did well today." Her eyes filled instantly. "I didn't feel like I did." "You spoke," he said. "That matters." She nodded, biting her lip, and stepped aside. Claire stood and moved into the aisle. As she passed the man who had collapsed, now seated upright with a blanket and oxygen still in place, he reached out and touched her sleeve. "Thank you," he said. His voice was weak but clear. "You didn't have to." "Yes," Claire said softly. "I did." They walked her off the plane through the forward door, not because of status, but because of containment. The terminal beyond was bright, loud, indifferent. People hurried past, dragging bags, staring at phones, unaware of what had almost happened above the clouds. James led her into a small conference room just off the gate. No windows, beige walls, a table that had seen better decades, 2 bottles of water already waiting. "This is standard," he said. "Statements, documentation. Legal will join remotely." "Understood," Claire replied. Martin took a seat across from her. He looked older now than he had on the plane, the weight of responsibility settling back onto his shoulders. "For what it's worth," he said, "I've been trying to flag this for years." Claire met his gaze. "Then today wasn't an accident." "No," he said quietly. "It wasn't." A screen flickered on at the far end of the room. A woman appeared, mid-50s, silver hair pulled back, eyes sharp behind reading glasses. "Claire," she said without preamble. You look composed. Margaret, Claire replied. I am. Margaret Chen, General Counsel. One of the few people who knew exactly why Claire had taken this flight. We're recording, Margaret said. I'll ask questions. Answer plainly. No speculation. Of course. The questions came methodically. Timeline, words spoken, physical contact, witnesses. Claire answered without emotion, without embellishment. She described Dana's grip, the delay, the attempt to control the narrative. When it was over, Margaret leaned back in her chair. This will not be quick, she said. The union will push back. Dana will claim provocation. I expect she will, Claire said. And there will be scrutiny, Margaret continued. Of you. Claire nodded. Good. Margaret studied her. You're aware this complicates things. Yes. Then why today? Margaret asked. Why this flight? Claire paused. Not long, just enough. Because silence is expensive, she said, and we've been paying for it for too long. The screen went dark. James exhaled. We'll escort you through a private corridor. Media's already sniffing around. Claire gathered her bag. Let them. In the hallway, Lily waited. She looked up when she saw Claire, eyes uncertain. Am I in trouble? She asked. No, Claire said. You're part of the record. Lily swallowed. I don't want to be invisible anymore. You won't be, Claire replied. A car waited outside. Black, unmarked. The driver nodded once and opened the door. As they pulled away from the terminal, Claire looked back at the airport, at the planes lined up like promises, at the machinery that only worked when the human parts did. Her phone buzzed. One new message. Unknown number. You should have stayed in your seat. Claire typed back without hesitation. Someone always does. She put the phone away. The city stretched ahead, sprawling and uneven, full of stories that rarely made headlines. Somewhere in it, Dana Hargreave would be calling a lawyer. Somewhere else, a manager would be pulling old files, realizing the ground beneath him had shifted. Claire closed her eyes, not to rest, but to prepare. This had never been about a single flight. It had been about what happened next. The hotel room was quiet, in the way expensive rooms often are, padded against the outside world, designed to make consequences feel distant. Claire sat at the small desk by the window, jacket folded neatly on the chair, city lights bleeding through the glass like scattered embers. She hadn't turned on the television. She didn't need noise. Her phone rested face down beside a yellow legal pad, filled with handwriting that hadn't been there an hour earlier. Names, dates, short phrases, patterns emerging not as ideas, but as confirmations. A knock came at the door, controlled, deliberate. She opened it to find Martin Hale standing in the hallway, jacket off now, sleeves rolled, the look of a man who had stopped pretending the day was normal. They've already started leaking, he said as he stepped inside. Not to the press. Internally. Good, Claire replied. That means the system is nervous. Martin let out a breath and sat across from her. Dana's union rep requested an injunction. Temporary. They're claiming procedural bias. Of course they are. And there's something else, he said. Operations flagged 3 similar incidents in the last 18 months. Different flights, different attendants, same supervisor chain. Claire picked up her pen again, drew a line beneath the name she'd already written. Robert Kessler, she said. Martin nodded. You know him. I know his resume, Claire replied. I also know why he's still employed. Martin leaned back. You're going to force this all the way up. I'm going to let it surface, Claire said. There's a difference. Silence settled between them. Heavy, but not uncomfortable. "You ever get tired of this?" Martin asked, being the person who pulls threads no one once touched. Claire looked out at the city. "I get tired of pretending the cost isn't real." Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't unknown. "Lily Park, are you okay?" Claire stared at the screen for a moment before replying. "I am. Are you?" A pause, then 3 dots, then a message. "They asked me to write another statement. They want details about Dana's tone, about how she spoke to you. I'm scared I'll say something wrong." Claire typed back slowly. "Tell the truth. That's the only version you can't be punished for later." Another pause. "Thank you." Claire set the phone down. Martin watched her. "She's going to get blowback." "Yes," Claire said, "which is why she matters." He frowned. "You're not going to shield her?" "I'm going to change the system that makes shielding necessary." Martin shook his head softly. "You don't think small?" "No," Claire said. "I think long." The next morning broke grey and early, the kind of Los Angeles morning that felt undecided about itself. Claire stood in front of the mirror, fastening a simple necklace, her reflection steady, unflinching. At 8:30, her phone rang. "Legal's on," Margaret Chen said without greeting, "and HR, and 2 board members who suddenly found availability." "Put them through," Claire replied. The screen filled with faces, some familiar, some wary, all attentive. "We have exposure," one of the board members said immediately. "Union pressure, media interest, potential civil claims." "And moral liability," Claire added. A pause. "That's harder to quantify," another voice said. "Only if you refuse to try," Claire replied. Margaret cleared her throat. Dana Hargreaves' record shows 6 complaints marked resolved without follow-up, all under Robert Kessler's review. Claire watched the board member's face tighten at the name. "Kessler's been with us 24 years, someone said. "He's respected." "He's invisible," Claire corrected. "That's not the same thing." The line went quiet. "Today," Claire continued, "we suspend him pending review. Not quietly, transparently. And we open every complaint file he closed without escalation." "That will invite scrutiny," the first board member said. "Yes," Claire said. "That's the point." Another silence. Longer this time. Finally, Margaret nodded. "I'll draft the notices." After the call ended, Claire stood by the window again, watching traffic inch along like blood through an artery. Her phone buzzed once more. This time it was Dana. One message, no greeting. "You think you're exposing corruption. You're just creating chaos." Claire read it twice, then replied, "Chaos is what happens when rot finally sees air." She blocked the number. Downstairs, in a conference room that smelled faintly of old carpet and burnt coffee, Lily Park sat across from 2 people she had never expected to face alone. A union representative, a corporate investigator. Her hands trembled as she spoke, but her voice held. "She told me not to log the delay," Lily said. "She said it would reflect poorly on the team." She said protocol was flexible, if you knew how to word it. The investigator nodded. "Did this happen often?" Lily swallowed. "Enough that I thought it was normal." The union rep shifted in his chair. "Did you ever feel pressured?" he asked. Lily looked up. "Yes." The word landed heavier than anything else she'd said. Back in her hotel room, Claire received the update from Martin. "Kessler's been escorted out," he said. "Badge deactivated. No announcement yet, but it's coming." "Good," Claire replied. "And Dana?" "Dana will fight," Claire said. "They always do." She ended the call and sat down, finally allowing herself to exhale. This was the part no one saw. The quiet grind, the waiting, the knowing that change rarely arrived cleanly or without collateral. She thought of the man on the plane, of his breathing evening out, of the moment when inaction had almost been fatal. She thought of Lily, standing when it would have been easier not to. She thought of Dana, gripping authority like a shield, mistaking longevity for righteousness. Claire closed her eyes. This wasn't over. It was only beginning. The boardroom smelled like polished wood and old confidence. Claire noticed it the moment she stepped inside, the way the air carried a faint trace of cologne and coffee that had been reheated too many times. Men and women in tailored jackets sat around the long table, tablets glowing softly, faces arranged into practiced neutrality. This was where stories were flattened, where harm became language, where decisions hid behind phrases like risk mitigation and reputational exposure. Claire took her seat at the head of the table without ceremony. Robert Kessler sat 3 chairs down on her right. Early 60s, grey at the temples, the kind of man who smiled with his mouth, but never his eyes. He had built a career on being agreeable, on smoothing edges, on making problems feel smaller than they were until they disappeared. He didn't look at her. Margaret Chen's voice cut through the low murmur. This meeting is on record. Attendance noted. Purpose stated. Kessler finally lifted his head. I was told this was a clarification, he said, not a tribunal. Claire met his gaze. It became something else when the facts stopped cooperating. A flicker crossed his face, annoyance, then control. You're making this personal, he said. One flight, one incident. Claire leaned forward, folding her hands. You signed off on 6 complaints involving delayed medical response, she said. 4 involved elderly passengers. 2 involved physical contact. All were downgraded under your review. Kessler exhaled through his nose. Context matters. Yes, Claire replied, and you removed it. A board member cleared his throat. Robert, can you explain the decision process? Kessler straightened. We deal with thousands of passengers a day. Complaints are emotional, subjective. If we escalated every one, operations would grind to a halt. Claire nodded slowly. And when did avoiding inconvenience become more important than preventing harm? Silence. Kessler shifted in his seat. You weren't in this industry when it was chaos, he said, when crews were unsupported and passengers ruled the cabin. We had to bring order. You replaced accountability with insulation, Claire said. That's not order. That's decay. Kessler's jaw tightened. Dana Hargreave is a strong lead. She kept her cabin running. She kept it quiet, Claire corrected. There's a difference. Margaret tapped her pen. Robert, were you aware of the physical contact allegation before Flight 718? Kessler hesitated. Too long. I was aware of a complaint, he said carefully. Unsubstantiated. By whom? Claire asked. By you, Claire finished. Every time. A murmur moved through the room. Kessler leaned back, folding his arms. You're framing experience as malice. No, Claire said. I'm framing negligence as policy. The words landed. Heavy, unavoidable. Across the city, in a small law office that smelled like toner and stress, Dana Hargreave sat with her attorney, hands clenched in her lap. They're scapegoating you, the attorney said. Classic maneuver. You push back. Dana stared at the wall. They're tearing everything down. They're protecting themselves, he replied. We file for wrongful termination, procedural violation, bias. Dana swallowed. What if they have evidence? They always say they do. She thought of Lily's face. of the way the younger attendant's eyes had dropped when Dana told her to adjust the report, of the grip on Claire's sleeve. Light, brief, indefensible. "I didn't hurt anyone," Dana said. The attorney didn't answer immediately. "Intent isn't the standard," he said finally. Back in the boardroom, Claire stood. "This isn't about one employee," she said, voice steady. "It's about a culture that teaches people to look away, that rewards silence, that punishes interruption." She looked around the table. Every person here has benefited from that system at some point, including me. A few eyes shifted. "I'm not exempt," she continued, "but I'm responsible now." Kessler laughed softly. "You think this makes you righteous?" "No," Claire said. "It makes me late." She turned to Margaret. "Proceed." Margaret nodded. "Effective immediately, Robert Kessler is placed on administrative leave pending full review. All cases under his supervision will be reopened by an independent committee." Kessler's face drained of color. "You can't do this without due process." "This is due process," Margaret replied. "Belated." Kessler stood abruptly, chair scraping. "You're setting a precedent." "Yes," Claire said. "That's the idea." He looked at her then. Really looked. For the first time, something like fear surfaced. "You're going to burn the house down." Claire held his gaze. "I'm opening the windows." He left without another word. Later that afternoon, Lily Park sat in a break room, staring at her phone. Notifications stacked up. Messages from co-workers, from friends, from people she barely knew. "Did you see the email? They suspended him. Are you okay?" She typed a reply to no one in particular. "I told the truth." Her phone buzzed again, a new message. Claire Monroe. "You did exactly what you should have." Lily exhaled, shoulders shaking. Across town, news alerts began to ping. Not headlines yet. Trade publications, industry chatter. Words like internal review and cultural overhaul slipped into circulation. Claire stood alone in her office, jacket draped over the chair, the city stretching out below. She felt no triumph, only momentum. This was the dangerous part, when systems fought back, when people rewrote themselves as victims, when allies grew quiet. Her phone rang. Margaret. "We're getting pressure," she said. "External, political." "From where?" Claire asked. Margaret hesitated. "A former board advisor. He's warning that donors are nervous." Claire closed her eyes briefly. "They'll survive. And you?" Claire opened her eyes again, gaze hardening. "So will I." She hung up and looked out at the city once more. Somewhere, Dana Hargreave was preparing to defend herself. Somewhere, Robert Kessler was calling favors he thought he'd earned. Somewhere, Lily Park was learning what it meant to stand in the open. And somewhere inside the company, the system was shifting, resisting, cracking. Claire didn't smile. She waited. The press did not arrive all at once. It never did. It seeped in, quiet at first, like water through hairline cracks. Trade newsletters, industry blogs, a segment buried halfway through a morning business show, words chosen carefully. Internal review, leadership transition, ongoing inquiry. Claire watched it unfold from her office, the television muted, captions crawling along the bottom of the screen. She read faces instead of headlines, the slight tension in a reporter's jaw, the way certain names were spoken slower than others. Pressure had begun to equalize. Margaret Chen stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, listening more than speaking. When she finally ended the call, she didn't turn around right away. "They're invoking the collective bargaining agreement," she said. "Dana's counsel filed a formal grievance, alleging retaliation. Claire didn't look up from the folder in front of her. Expected. And Robert Kessler's attorney is requesting a closed-door settlement discussion. Also expected. Margaret turned. They want this contained. They always do, Claire said. Containment is how it got this far. Margaret hesitated. There's something else. Claire waited. The FAA, Margaret continued. They've requested documentation, voluntarily for now, but they're paying attention. That made Claire look up. Good, she said. Margaret studied her. You realize what that means? It means the narrative shifts from personnel to compliance, Claire replied. From inconvenience to safety. And from internal to federal, Margaret said quietly. Yes. Silence settled between them. Not tense, deliberate. Across the city, in a rented conference room that smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant, Dana Hargreaves sat with her union representative and attorney. A legal pad lay open in front of her, pages still blank. They're painting you as a symptom, the rep said, not the disease. Dana stared at her hands. I didn't ask to be the example. No, the attorney said, but examples are useful. Dana's phone buzzed. A message from a former colleague. Saw the news. This is getting ugly. She didn't respond. What are our chances? Dana asked finally. The attorney chose his words carefully. We can argue procedural flaws, inconsistent enforcement, stress environment. And the passenger? Dana asked. What if she pushes? She hasn't, he replied. Not publicly. Dana's jaw tightened. She will. Back at headquarters, Martin Hale sat across from Claire, a stack of reports spread between them like a map of old damage. I've been through the reopened files, he said. There's a pattern. Not just delay. Intimidation. Passengers discouraged from filing. Junior crew coached on language. Claire traced a finger along a highlighted line. Fear-based efficiency. Martin nodded. It keeps things moving, until it doesn't. Who else knew? Claire asked. Martin exhaled. Enough people to be complicit, not enough to feel responsible. A knock sounded at the door. James Adler stepped in, posture tight. We've got a situation, he said. Media's picked up on the FAA angle. They're asking if this ties to past incidents. Claire stood. Does it? Yes, James said, but not cleanly. Then we don't pretend otherwise, Claire replied. We cooperate. James frowned. That opens us up. It opens the truth, Claire said, which is cheaper in the long run. James studied her for a moment, then nodded. I'll coordinate with comms. As he left, Martin looked at Claire. You're choosing the hard path. There isn't another one, she said. That afternoon, Lily Park sat in her apartment, laptop open, the cursor blinking at the top of an unsent email. She had rewritten it 6 times already. Statement regarding Flight 718. She thought of her first day in uniform, of the pride, of the rules drilled into her until they felt like law, of the day she learned which rules bent and who decided. Her phone buzzed. Claire Monroe. You don't owe anyone perfection, only honesty. Lily closed her eyes. Then she hit send. The email went to legal, to HR, to the independent committee, and then, inevitably, it leaked. By evening, the story had teeth. Not a viral clip, no grainy video. Something worse. Documents. Testimony. A timeline that didn't flatter anyone. A former flight attendant appeared on a local news program, face shadowed, voice distorted. It wasn't just her, the voice said. It was how we were taught to survive. Dana watched the interview from her kitchen table, lights off, the screen casting her face in pale blue. She turned it off halfway through. She sat in the dark and remembered the first time she'd been told to soften a report. The relief she'd felt. The way it made everything easier. She poured herself a glass of water. Didn't drink it. The next morning, the FAA notice arrived. Formal inquiry. Scope defined. Timeline pending. Margaret read it twice before handing it to Claire. "They're thorough." "I hope so," Claire said. "You're aware," Margaret added, "that this could result in fines, mandated oversight, leadership review." "Yes," Claire replied. "And your position is not the priority," Claire said. "The system is." Margaret watched her. "You're serious?" Claire met her gaze. "I always am." Outside, rain began to fall, light at first, then steady. It streaked the windows, blurring the city into something softer, less certain. Claire stood alone in the boardroom later that day, lights off, table empty. She imagined the seats filled, the arguments, the justifications, the fear. She thought of the man on the plane, of how close it had been, of how easily it could have been written off. Her phone rang, an unfamiliar number. She answered. "This is Dana Hargreave," the voice said, strained, controlled. "I want to talk." Claire closed her eyes for a moment. "About what?" she asked. "About the truth," Dana said. "Not the version they're using." Claire opened her eyes again, gaze steady. "There's only one," she replied. A pause, then a breath on the other end of the line. "Then, I suppose," Dana said quietly, "we'll see who survives." The line went dead. Claire set the phone down. The storm outside intensified, rain hammering the glass, washing the city clean whether it wanted to be or not. This was no longer about one flight. It was about what happened when institutions were forced to remember why they existed, and the reckoning had only just begun. The hearing room was smaller than the boardroom, but heavier in a different way. Fluorescent lights, neutral walls, no art, no windows, no distractions. This was not a place for persuasion. It was a place for record. Claire sat at the long table, jacket on the back of her chair, hands folded, posture calm. To her left, Margaret Chen flipped through a binder thick enough to bruise. Across from them, Union Counsel, Company Counsel, and 2 FAA representatives arranged their documents with quiet efficiency. No one rushed. Everyone understood the gravity. Dana Hargreave entered last. She looked thinner, not broken, but sharpened. Her uniform was gone, replaced by a grey blazer that tried and failed to carry the same authority. She avoided Claire's eyes as she took her seat beside her attorney. The FAA investigator cleared his throat. "This proceeding concerns operational conduct, compliance with federal safety standards, and internal reporting practices related to Flight 718. No drama, no moral language, just scope." Testimony began. The paramedic spoke first, voice steady, recounting the delay, the lack of oxygen deployment, the resistance. He did not speculate. He did not accuse. He simply described what he saw, what he did, and what nearly happened. Then Lily Park. She walked to the table slowly, shoulders squared, hands trembling only slightly. She took the oath, voice firm despite everything. "I was instructed to delay calling for medical volunteers," Lily said. "I was told it would cause unnecessary alarm." "By whom?" the investigator asked. "Dana Hargreave." Dana's attorney shifted. "Objection! Hearsay!" The investigator didn't look up. "Overruled. Continue." Lily swallowed. "I was also told to adjust the incident report, to describe the delay as minimal." "Did this instruction feel unusual?" another investigator asked. Lily hesitated. then shook her head. No, that's what scared me. It felt normal. A murmur rippled through the room. Not outrage, recognition. Robert Kessler's deposition followed via video. His image flickered onto the screen, composed, distant, already defensive. I relied on my team's judgment, he said. I trusted experienced leads to manage their cabins. Were you aware of repeated complaints regarding delayed medical response? The FAA investigator asked. I was aware of concerns, Kessler replied, not violations. Claire watched his eyes, the way they flicked sideways before certain answers, the habits of a man who had talked himself out of accountability for decades. Then it was Dana's turn. She took the oath without hesitation, sat upright, chin lifted. I did what I believed was necessary to maintain order, Dana said. Passengers do not always understand safety protocols. And delaying oxygen? The investigator asked. Dana inhaled. I assessed the situation. I believed the risk was manageable. Based on what medical training? Another voice asked. Dana paused. Experience. The silence that followed was long and surgical. Claire was called last. She stood, felt the room shift, not because of who she was, but because of what she represented. Not the passenger, not the executive, the witness who hadn't looked away. I didn't intervene because I wanted control, Claire said. I intervened because I saw harm being normalized. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. This wasn't a single failure, she continued. It was a pattern that rewarded silence and punished interruption. And that pattern nearly killed someone. Dana's eyes flicked to her then. Just once. The FAA investigator nodded slowly. Thank you. The hearing adjourned without conclusion. That was how these things ended. Not with verdicts, but with waiting. Outside, reporters clustered behind barriers, voices raised, questions shouted. Claire exited through a side corridor, the air cooler there, quieter. Margaret walked beside her. This will take months. Yes, Claire said. And there will be findings, mandates, possibly leadership consequences. Yes. Margaret studied her. You're prepared for that? Claire stopped walking, looked at her. I wouldn't have started otherwise. Across town, Dana sat alone in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, forehead resting against it. The hearing replayed in her mind. Lily's voice, the paramedic's calm certainty, the word normal, spoken like an indictment. Her phone buzzed. A message from her attorney. They're leaning towards sustained findings. Dana closed her eyes. For the first time, she wondered when exactly she had crossed the line. Not the moment on the plane, not the grip on the sleeve. Much earlier, in the quiet choices, the shortcuts. The times she told herself this was just how things worked. She started the car. That night, Claire stood on her balcony, city lights flickering below. She felt no relief, only a strange clarity. Justice, she knew, rarely arrived with thunder. It came with documentation, with courage that held under pressure, with people willing to say, this is not acceptable, even when it cost them. Her phone buzzed once more. Margaret. FAA findings coming next week. Prepare. Claire typed back. I am. She set the phone down and looked out over the city again. The story was no longer hers to control. And that was exactly the point. The findings arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, not with sirens or headlines, but as a sealed document marked determination. Claire read it alone in her office, the city still half asleep beyond the glass. The language was precise, unsentimental, impossible to argue with. Sustained violations, failure to adhere to medical response protocols, pattern of supervisory negligence, mandated oversight, corrective action required. She set the pages down carefully, not as a victor, but as a custodian of something fragile that had finally been named. By noon, the company's statement went live. No spin, no softening, an acknowledgement of harm, a commitment to change that could be measured, audited, enforced. Independent monitors, mandatory retraining built around de-escalation and medical readiness, a protected reporting channel that bypassed local chains of command, consequences spelled out in plain language. Claire insisted on clarity because ambiguity had been the hiding place for too long. The reaction was mixed, as she knew it would be. Some praised the transparency. Others called it an overcorrection. A few former insiders complained that experience was being sacrificed to appease regulators. Claire read the messages and let them pass through her without lodging. The work had never been about comfort. It had been about safety, dignity, and the cost of pretending nothing was wrong. Dana Hargreave received the notice in her attorney's office. Sustained findings, license review, mandatory remediation if she wished to work in regulated aviation again. No criminal charges, no spectacle, just a narrowing of options. She listened, nodded, signed where she was told. When it was over, she sat for a long time without speaking. The attorney offered reassurance, then left her alone. Dana stared at her hands and understood that the hardest part was not punishment. It was being seen, clearly, at last, by a system that no longer needed her version of events. Robert Kessler's outcome followed a different path. Early retirement, benefits adjusted, a non-admission clause that did not shield him from the record. His name became a footnote in the training materials, not as a villain, but as a case study in how neglect compounds. The quiet damage of decisions made to avoid inconvenience. The kind that accumulates until someone gets hurt. Lily Park stood in a training room weeks later, addressing a group of new hires. She spoke carefully, not as a hero, but as a colleague who had learned the weight of a single sentence spoken at the right moment. She demonstrated how to call for help without hesitation, how to document without fear, how to recognize the difference between order and control. When she finished, the room was silent, not from awe, but from attention. The good kind, the kind that lasts. The man from the flight wrote a letter. His handwriting shook, but his meaning did not. He thanked the crew who acted, the stranger who stood, the company that chose to face itself. Claire read it twice, then placed it in a folder she kept for days when the work felt endless. She never replied directly. She did not need to. The letter had already done its job. On a later afternoon, Claire walked through a terminal without ceremony. She wore the same grey coat. She watched the flow of people, the choreography of work done well, the moments where someone paused to help without being asked. She noticed what had changed and what had not. She made notes in her head and promised herself to keep listening. Systems did not heal once and remain healthy forever. They required vigilance. They required people. That evening, she addressed the staff in a recorded message, not from a stage, from a desk. She spoke about responsibility as a shared practice, about authority as a tool that must be held lightly, about the courage to interrupt harm even when it costs something. She did not invoke her title. She did not need to. The message ended not with a flourish, but with an expectation. As the city darkened outside her window, Claire felt the strange quiet that follows a reckoning. Not peace, not relief, a steadiness. The kind that comes when truth has been put back where it belongs, and everyone must now live with it. She turned off the light and left the office, carrying nothing but her coat and the knowledge that tomorrow would demand the same clarity. If this story resonated with you, and you believe accountability matters wherever people hold power, like and subscribe to stay with us, and comment these 3 words: do the right thing.